So when I first moved to the UAE, I actually used to call my parenting seminars conscious parenting. And my journey in parenting has begun from, maybe I would say it's now been 16 and a half years where I've been studying it and practicing it. And I was actually expecting my first child, who is now 15 years old, actually right before I was expecting her, this idea of how do I do parenting and what am I going to do and how am I going to do this? And so I had thought about it so much. And then I started, when I was expecting her, I started reading about parenting. I read a lot. I studied all different kinds of parenting programs, all different, as neurotic as you can get is what I was when I was expecting my first child. And I did so much reading that I decided to do my dissertation in parenting because I was like, I have to put this to use somehow. So I created a parenting model for the incarcerated population in Arizona. And then eventually I moved to the UAE and I started, teaching, these types of talks because this is where my passion was. I had more children. So now I'm a mother of 4 children. I have always been studying or working. So I've been one of these working moms, I would say, for the duration of their existence. And as I evolved and my children, sort of made me learn the things that I learned, I realized that it really was about conscious parent. And it was not about the parenting, it was about me. And the more I worked on myself, the easier the parenting became. And one of the first books I read on parenting was Parenting from the Inside Out. And I really realized that even parenting is an inside job. I know everything, happiness and peace of mind and peace of heart and resiliency, all of that is an inside job. But parenting especially is an inside job. And too often, and I think we are very much inundated with so much information that we actually have lost touch with that inside part of us, the part that guides us, the part that is our instinct as a parent, mother or father, and we've just lost that. And we're operating from a place of here, and that is a place of a lot of anxiety because one person says that you can sleep with your children, co-sleeping is good for you, and then the other people are saying that co-sleeping is not good for you, and so you always feel a little bit split. Feed this to your children, don't feed this to your children, do this with your children, don't do this with your children, and both parties have enough research to actually have a position, and so you feel constantly torn, but then you're actually not attuned to what you know as what your child might need. And in the end, you know best and they know best, and they will tell you what they need best. So I just wanted to lay that out there, that on this parenting journey that you all are on, the most important thing is going to be for you to be attuned to yourself. And everything I will say to you, I have 4 children and I actually parent them very differently. I'm a different parent to the first one who literally parented herself and often parents me as well. And then I am to the second one who's a quiet, steady, firm kind of guy, determined, athletic. And then the third one who is just like me, because you always have one that's going to give you that, that struggle. And so the third one requires a whole lot more parenting or attention, or he's quite challenging. And then the fourth one who is just, I'm not sure what to do with her yet because she's a piece of work. And so you're always different and you show up differently for different kids. So I'm going to give you lots of information today. And I don't want you to be like, all right, I now know what to do and I'm going to just go home and do that. Because if you have multiple children, the way you do things is going to be very different. And it's going to start with you paying attention to your kids and then actually saying, okay, what do I need to do with this one, with this information for this kid? And how is that going to get translated? And so let's get started. So I'm going to, oh my God, sorry guys. I don't know what's happening with my computer. Bear with me as I share my screen. All right. And so, like I said, questions you can ask. I know I have some very hard positions on some of the things that people ask questions about, like technology, but I will share with you everything I know, and then you guys can do as you wish. But remember, you guys are the experts when it comes to this stuff. So somebody said they can't hear. I think everybody else can hear. I hope you can hear me. Okay, because if you can't hear me and I've been saying all this, then you'll just get a recording, but I'm not muted. I'm being recorded. Great. All right, guys, so we are talking about resiliency today, and that is the, that is the most important thing that I think our children and ourselves need at this point. So hold on one second. There's a couple people now saying that the voice is breaking. I don't know if it's your reception or my reception. Can you raise your hand if you can hear me properly? All right, so majority of us can hear me properly. So the people who cannot hear me, or there's, your voice, my voice is breaking, then you probably need to work on your computer or your network. All right, so let's get started. I'm not going to go too much into who I am and what, but you guys can find out. I'll talk a little bit about that at the end, okay? So, but I do want to mention two things. We have a single parent support group and a divorced parent support group. Oh, no. A single parent support group and a divorce support group, and lots of other support groups. We have infertility, we have grief, we have loss. I mean, we have all sorts of support groups running at the Lighthouse, which are free of charge, which are led by psychologists. So I just want you guys to consider that if you do need more support. The rest of the stuff I'm not going to go into. You guys can learn more about us on our social media platforms. So I'm going to start off by setting the scene. I always just like to do that. I always just like to zoom out and say, okay, well, why am I even talking about this? Why is this such an important thing for us to talk about? Then I'm going to go into defining resilience, what low resilience looks like. So maybe you can check on your radar. So like what's going on with your kids and where we can build some muscles, and then understand why children are less resilient, because we know it, right? We know it that they're less resilient. Like we could take anything, but then like they seem so much more fragile than us. What's going on with that? And then 15 elements of resilience, which is coming out of research, that it's not from me, but I actually forgot to write down where it's coming out from, but there's research, a model that came out of a university on these 15 elements of resilience. So I didn't make this up. And then what you can do to cultivate resilience. And I will tell you where the model is, because I don't have my notes in front of me. And so I'll tell you the model of resilience at the end, where it's coming out of, but it's coming out of a university, and they, did thousands of surveys across the board from parents and children. And then they came out with these 15 elements of resilience that children need. And then what you can do at home. So hopefully we'll get through all of that in the next 40 minutes. I doubt it. Usually these talks are a little bit longer than this, but 90 minutes long, but let's see what we can get through. I'll just quickly run through some of the statistics, because a lot of times parents are like, well, I don't even think that kids have issues. Well, kids really do have issues, and mental illness is the leading cause of disability in young people across the world, across the board. And this is statistics coming out of the World Health Organization. 1 in 5 people, and I would claim at this point that it's actually the numbers are higher than this. So they say about 20% of teenagers, young children and teenagers are experiencing mental health problems. And I would say with COVID, some of that has been exacerbated. So it's probably the number is a little bit higher. And half of that begins by the age of 14. It is very, very sensitive times, guys. Between the age of 12 and 16 is a very sensitive time for the brain. It's a very sensitive time for the child. Their body is changing, their mind is changing. And so we really want to be very protective of that. I'm actually going to be doing an Instagram live, some of these, not this week, but the following week. Not next week, but the following week, on how do you raise pre-teens and teens in this age. I have 3 teenagers, so I will speak from experience, but also from research. And then I would say the research shows that 3/4 of that actually develops by their 20s. So right before, they go off on their own, majority of the population is going to be developing a mental health condition by that time. So that's telling us that there's a whole lot of pressure being placed on teenagers. And regardless of what we see on social media, what we see on the news, what we see everywhere, it's still being untreated. it is still hindering their educational abilities, their potential, having them live fulfilling lives. There is still a lot of stigma. There is still a lot of isolation, and there's still a lot of suicide. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among young adults, so between 15 and 29-year-olds, and the first leading being traffic accidents. So these are preventable. We can do something to educate ourselves on that front to make sure that we can raise our awareness, get in early. Early intervention is as good as early intervention is as good as prevention, what we say. So really being attuned to that. So let's talk a little bit about what resiliency is. Resiliency comes from the Latin word resilio, which is to bounce back. Now, this is something I think that most people, when they think about resilient, they think about like a titanium wall. It actually isn't. It's more like a rubber ball where you hit the ground, but you bounce back. So that does require a lot of adversity for you to build that muscle, where it is a developmental process where resiliency involves agency, inner capability to call upon their internal strengths, engage with external resources, engage with other people, and then transform that difficult situation into a learning experience. Nowhere in there it says that these people can take a hit and nothing happens to them, right? We have this idea that resilient people can just go on and not be affected. And I would say that, with resiliency is that they fall down and they hit the ground and they cry and they're devastated. And then 2 days later, they pick themselves back up and they show up back on the field or they show up back in the classroom. And that's the true definition of resiliency. I wanted to share some other definitions because I just think it's important to name that. This is different from grit, by the way. Grit is where you are actually being resilient in where you are moving towards long-term goals with passion. So grit is different from resilience. Resiliency is just basically your internal strengths and internal ability to adapt, manage, negotiate effectively. I also like this last one. It's a process of overcoming the negative effects of risk exposure and coping with successful traumatic events. So every time we get pushed out of our comfort zone, we build a muscle. We get pushed out of our comfort zone, we build a muscle. And what parents are doing nowadays, which is resulting in, well, actually, I won't get into that. I'm going to come to that in a second. But what's happening is where people are not actually getting pushed out of their comfort zone and we're just living in that comfort zone. And that's why there's no muscle. And so what low resiliency can actually look like is that you're going to actually be a lot more vulnerable to mental health difficulties because you don't know what resources you have, because your parents are overly competent and you actually haven't developed any muscle because your parents have the muscle. And this is where parents have to do a lot of their work, where they stand by and they watch their child struggle, not suffer, struggle, and maybe mildly suffer with something while they remain a compassionate witness. But that's not happening. And so the child is not developing any muscle. So they become emotional, they're withdrawn. They can actually be quite defiant. A lot of times kids who are really defiant and engage in risky behavior actually have low resiliency. You will see that a lot of people who have addiction issues in their adulthood, actually that is a sign of low resiliency because they were not able to cope with all the intensity of the emotion. And so they then started to numb their emotions, but when they got some personal agency. So what happens is that as a child, they can't do anything, so they act out. Then as a teenager, they might be able to drive, or they're, a little bit resourceful, so they can get drugs, they can get alcohol, they can get smoking, they can get vaping, and they start to numb some of their difficult emotions. They have gaming, they have shopping, they have Netflix, and these become numbing agents. And eventually those addictions get bigger and more, serious. And so that's what distractible children might end up actually doing. They become addicted to something or another because they can't cope with the intensity of that difficult emotion. And so they might struggle academically. They might have trouble falling asleep. This is all a result of low resiliency where they can't cope with some of the difficult stuff that shows up for them. So why are children less resilient today? First of all, we're just bubble wrapping our children. I think parents are, our children are less resilient because parents are more anxious these days. I know as a parent, when I see my child suffer, when I see him really struggling with something or see her really struggling with something, inside of me, I'm like, every, maternal instinct is kicking on for me to go in and save that child or to remove that problem from that child. To sit with my anxiety while I watch their suffering is like a Herculean ask and task. And so what ends up happening is that since we cannot tolerate our own anxiety, we swoop in, we take out their problem, and we bubble wrap them. We don't want them to fall. We don't want them to bleed. We don't want them to, make sure you check in with me here. Make sure you don't go there. Make sure you don't say this. Like, we're really hovering, really, really very, very on top of their heads. And that's why they're not going out and making their mistakes. And you know what? Wisdom, experience, think about all the things that you did that your parents didn't know about, right? Like if my mom had any clue as to what I was up to, like after school or before school, and things like that, where this is where you learn your way a little bit. As long as you keep anchoring that child in values, we've got to loosen the reins and have them make some of these mistakes and have them come up, face their own problems. So this is number 2, where we make their problem our problem. You didn't get invited to that party. Let me call Johnny's mom. Okay, John, I really would like you to invite And the next thing you know, Johnny's invited. And you are now at that party. And so we are overly involved in their problems, and we are not teaching them any problem solving skills. We are not teaching them any life skills. The third is a sense of entitlement. I think they're growing up in a culture, in a world, global culture, which is, fueled by social media, where I am the most important thing that has ever happened. And children and, really little children and adolescent are egocentric, and they do believe that the world revolves around them. Developmentally, it is appropriate for them to feel that way. However, you throw on social media, and now that thing has become on clinical levels of self-absorption and entitlement. Well, where mom is cooking this meal for this kid and this meal for this kid and this meal for this kid, and that's just not, this is not what life is, right? Life is about just kind of having to deal with what is given to you many times. So they're going off to college, and they're realizing that people are not tending to them the way their parents and their nannies and their this one and their that one was tending to them. And they are not the center of the universe. And that harsh reality hits them quite hard. And that's where they crumble. And in college, I used to work in a college campus in Texas in the US, and they actually refer to these kids as teacups. And these teacups are just those Fabergé eggs. They're so like, you press on them and they literally crumble. Mom was booking their appointments. Mom was registering them for classes. Mom was showing up to, orientation. Like there were so many things that they were just not able to sort of cut that cord, where some of these experiences, the child has got to be more invested in that experience than the parent is. But we don't have that model of thinking. The parent is overly involved, and which makes the child less involved. If you grab both hands in your hand right now, if you hold on very tightly, this hand automatically lets go, because that's just the reaction. And so if you hold on gently and the child holds on gently, you can hold both hands. And this is kind of how life needs to work. If I hold on too tightly to my child, the child will let go, because mom's got this. But if I hold on gently and I'm watching you and I'm with you and I'm going to let you figure this one out, and I'm going to, okay, you know what, why don't you take that class? Oh, I don't like it. Well, you've still got to see it through. You've registered for it. And then at the end of the semester, you don't want this. But the mom comes in, and the mom is now calling the school counselor that this kid needs to get out of this class because she's not enjoying it, because she should enjoy everything in life. Not a good lesson. Not a good lesson for a kid to have in high school, is that you should enjoy everything in life, because there are times where you will be bored and you will be frustrated. And that's what resiliency looks like. How do you move through those periods of adversity, boredom, anger, disappointment, failure, disengagement, and still remain present and still remain committed? That's what grit is, and that's what resiliency is. And then the fourth one is this pressure of positive thinking and happiness, and then not a lot of talk about values. You know, religion sort of has lost its footing, and out with religion went all the value talk as well. And so now there's not a lot of value talk going on. Values are about, look at what I ate, look at what I did, me, I. And so narcissism has become a value. Consumerism has become a value. You know, capitalism has become a value, but there are no other values really holding us. When was the last time you spoke to your kids about honesty, or about justice, about fairness, about humanity, about compassion? It's just not happening. But there's all this pressure about kids feeling like they should be happy all the time. There's like smiley faces plastered everywhere. And, you know, my daughter came to me, she's 14. Well, she was 14. Now she's not 14, she's 15. But she came to me and she said, Mama, I think I'm depressed. And okay, tell me. And so of course oh my God, this is exactly when it happens. And she said, well, I've been feeling really low. I've been crying. I'm feeling really sad. And she gave me all the symptoms of depression. And I'm like, okay, it's happening. And my daughter is depressed. And I said, how long has it been going on? And she said 3 days. I said, that's not depression. If this goes on for longer than 3 days, and we're talking, if it's going on for 2 weeks, most of the day, every day, now we're talking, it's a clinical issue. 3 days. I said, what led to this mood? Oh, well, you know, I got in a fight with one of my friends. Okay, that is not depression. That's called life. And so, no, you do not have to be happy all the time. Life has their dips, and you have your valleys and your peaks. And kids need to know the valleys and the peaks of life, but they don't. We only show them the best front, and we only show them all, oh, I got this promotion, but we don't tell them that I really messed up on a project, right? It just doesn't flow out. We celebrate the high moments. We don't necessarily talk about the low moments. So that needs to be part of our conscious, deliberate parenting. And then lastly, there's just a high pressure without life skills being taught. And this is like one of my biggest agendas in life at this point, is that we've got to train our kids early in life. All of my kids actually do have a therapist. I want them to have self-awareness. I don't have any technology access. They don't have a phone. They don't have social media, because I really want them to develop a sense of self before I hand them these weapons of mass destruction, really. And so I would say that there's a lot of academic pressure without them actually getting the training for how do you meditate, how do you focus yourself, how do you do breathing, how do you do stress management, how do you do anxiety management. We're not teaching them these things. And that's where I think when you give a child a stressor, but you don't equip them with that stressor, it's like throwing them in the deep end without teaching them how to swim, and then wondering why they're drowning. So what is our role? And I think our role, we cannot be bystanders as parents. We cannot think that the school is going to teach them. We have got to make this a conscious, objective, strategic decision in our children's upbringing. We have to be very thoughtful about, what did I do today that made sure that they, you know, encountered some struggle, or they encountered some stress? What kind of skills did I teach them today? Of course, it's not like every single day, but during the week, like what happened and what lessons have they learned? We've got to be conscious about equipping them, especially if there's no other sort of model in place. Like religion gives you a model of operation, right? Operating model. If you don't have an operating model, then you've got to create an operating model, which will give them a compass, which they will tune into, and they will say, okay, this is how you solve a problem. This is how you deal with grief. This is how you deal with loss. This is how you deal with failure. And it does have to be very deliberate and conscious and strategic. Oh, here it is. It's the International Resiliency Research Project, and it had actually 12,000 families and children from 22 sites in 22 countries. And so this is where I'm getting this information from. So this model actually is I am, I can, anyways, I will tell you what it is. It is I am, Oh, I have, I am, I can model. And I want you to think about these 15 elements. And then here is where we're going to be coming up with, what can I do to show them that they have? What can I do to show them that they have limit setting? What can I do as a parent to show them positive modeling? What can I do as a parent to show them personal initiative, or give them the ability to have personal initiative? What can I do to make sure that they have people who help them when they're sick? And I think this is where you do not need to have all 15 of these elements, but having one of them is not enough. So I have it divided into three sections of 5, which is, this is I have. The next one will be I am. The next one will be I can. And so you can't just have I have. So for example, a child can have a lot of loving and trusting individuals who care about them and positive modeling and all of that. They have, but they don't have the I am capable, I have strength, I have inner abilities. And so that kid's not going to be resilient, because they have only one aspect of resilience, which is the I have. You have to have elements of all three. I have, I am, I can. So take whatever you can from what I'm about to say, and we will work from there. And so one thing that people, like I said, people think of resiliency as, this kind of fierce, uncompromising independence, this rugged self-reliance, determination, inner strength that you don't need anyone. That's not resilience. All the research in resilience will show that you must have reliable presence of supportive relationships in your life in order for you to be resilient. It can be a coach, it can be a parent, it can be a therapist, it can be, your grandmother. It doesn't necessarily have to be the parent, but you must have people around, and even one person will do the job. And that's where you hear, some of these stars like Oprah, and, they say that it was my grandmother, or it was my teacher who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I had a very traumatic home, but I had this coach that believed in me. And that's where we want to increase their exposure to people that actually love them and that can have positive role models around them, and find people that they sort of connect to or that show care to them. They should have people around them that they trust, who love me no matter what, who set limits. A lot of times we've seen in therapy that my kids will say, well, my parents don't care. What do you mean your parents don't care? How do you know they don't care? Well, they don't care if I come home late. They don't care if I leave early. Like I don't have any rules. Rules give children containment. You're not doing them any service by not having rules. Whatever your rules might be, but they give you a standard of practice. For example, if you worked in a company and the company didn't have like an operating sort of manual as to what are some of the expectations, then you would feel a little bit like, can I do this? Can I take a 1-hour lunch? Can I go out? Like, you would be feeling very, very confused. And so giving them a model of operating and setting those limits is going to be very important, especially around technology. Do not give them a device unless there has been a long conversation, goes over a whole bunch of weeks, maybe months, maybe years, as to what will happen. This is where you're literally giving them a device that is going to affect their frontal lobe from forming. And you need to make sure that all the rules are in place and they sign off on that. And that's when you break that rule, this is what's going to happen. So they know. And this is where parents are just like, oh, Merry Christmas, Happy Eid, here's a, PS whatever. And I think we're on 5 now, PS5 or PS7, I don't know, whichever one. And they are not actually having any conversations about it. And then they're wondering why the kid is addicted to it. And then they're feeling confused as to what they can do about it. So please have limits around devices. People who show positive things by doing the right thing, people that show me how to do things the right way by doing those things. Children will do as you do, not as you say. You can say whatever the heck you want, but if you are not doing those things, they will not do those things. Modeling is the most important way of learning for children. If you swear, but then you tell your children not to swear, children will do as we do. If you yell, if you scream, if you shout, whatever, and you don't have anger management, do not expect your kids to have anger management. Like if you are bullying other people, do not expect your children not to bully other people. So be what you want your children to be before you tell them what they should be. People who want me to learn to do things on my own. So this is where you stand on the sidelines and let them struggle a little bit. People who help me when I'm sick or I'm in danger. This is where they learn to self-advocate. Who is going to be in your tribe? I have, I call it the board of advisors for my children. Who's on your board of advisors? Because it can't just be me, because there will be days where I might not be there for you. Who are you going to call upon? Their therapist, their coach, their personal trainer, maybe their grandmother, their aunt, their uncle, my best friend. Like these people are on their board of advisors. You can call upon any one of them. And you need to know who they are just so they feel that they are actually loved and held in that way. The next one is I am. So a person the child needs to feel like they are lovable and likable. And this is where a lot of times we don't want to criticize our children, because if you are criticizing your children, you are going to affect their confidence. We do want to give them feedback, but you all know the models of feedback that you use at work. You want to use the same models of feedback with your children, because when you criticize them and when you call them names, they might end up doing the right thing the next time, the right thing, the thing you want them to do, but they're going to be doing it to avoid criticism. They're not going to operate from a place inside of them. And what we want is we want them to rely on that place inside of them more than trying to please you or trying to get you to like them. So how do you act likable and lovable from a place of values and an inner compass rather than to avoid or rather than to appease? I am glad to do nice things for others and to show my concern. So the research shows that children's empathy levels are declining by the minute. There's a book called The Narcissism Epidemic. I highly, highly recommend it. It's actually a really fun read as well. And they are finding that children are less empathetic, but do you blame them? When everything in their life revolves around them, why would they actually be engaged in empathy? Where are the opportunities for them to be engaged in empathy? Especially in a place like Dubai, where everything looks pretty and everything looks shiny and everything looks perfect. They actually don't have their heartstrings tugging and pulling. So exposing them to some of what is happening in the world in gentle ways, and saying, what are you going to do about this? Where is that hurting inside of you? And how are you going to feel responsible for taking care of these people that have nothing to do with you, that can give you nothing back, but that you're actually engaged in doing nice things? And this is your social responsibility. I am respectful to myself and others. Respect in its broadest sense, whether it is the way they speak about themselves, whether it's the way they speak about others, whether it's about how they treat themselves. Respect is about how they dress. Respect is about, how they take care of their body, what they eat. So we really want to broaden that definition of respect. And how do you show up for yourself every day? 9 would be I'm willing to be responsible for what I do. Now, this is where consequences come in, guys. We've got to let them make mistakes, and then we've got to let them own that mistake, and then we've got to let them experience the consequence of that mistake. If they're a mean kid and they're not a nice kid and they don't get invited to parties, then let them take responsibility for that. And then let's just say, what are you going to do differently for you to actually be a likable and lovable person? Because right now, in the way you are acting, it's not very nice. And why would someone want that at their party? Why would someone want that in their social circle? And so what can you do to actually improve that? And then all the things I just mentioned is actually about confidence. But I am sure that things will be all right. It's not just about confidence. It's about optimism. That, you know what? Yeah, things are bad right now. It's COVID and you're sitting at home and you haven't seen your friends in the last 10 months. Yeah, this is not how we want things to be. And things will get better. Not but things will get better, and things will get better. Because this is bad and it will get better is where they hold both things inside of them at the same time. And that tension is being held inside of them. And that's where the muscle grows. That tension is where the muscle grows. It's not about, oh, look it on the bright side. No, I want you to know there is a bright side. Maybe you can't see it yet, but I want you to hold that space inside of yourself that there is a bright side and it will come. This is just not a good time. And so not trying to be, creating illusions or delusions. Oh my God, guys, I don't think I'm gonna have enough time. Okay, so the next one is I can talk to others about things that bother me. Like I said, it is really not about this fierce independence. I'll find a way to solve my problems. Please do not solve your problems for your children or their problems for your children. And if you have a problem, talk to your children about it. I got this issue and then I thought about this and I could do this and I could do that also, but I'm not going to do that because that doesn't feel good. And I'm probably going to feel really bad about myself if I do that. So I'm going to go with this. You're literally becoming like a ticker tape and you're giving them a model of life, right? We want to teach them how to deal with failure and how to deal with mistakes, but we can't teach them unless we let them go through that because experience is the biggest teacher. I want to learn how to control myself when I feel like doing something that does not, when I feel like doing something that feels dangerous. So this is where executive functioning is going to come in. Guys, children do not have a fully functioning frontal lobe until about 23, 24 years of age. So their brain is not fully formed until about 23, 24. You have got to be their surrogate frontal lobe. And developmentally speaking, there's a great book called Brainstorm, which is about the teenage brain. And the teenage brain is actually going to be a lot riskier than other brains, where they get higher dopamine hits and they actually minimize the risk of that situation. So they've got to find ways to control themselves. And I really believe giving them a moral compass, check in with the moral compass, check in with the moral compass. Would you want this printed on the front page of the newspaper? Would you want this announced over, Virgin Radio morning show? Don't do it if you don't want that happening. And that actually gives them a moment of pause. I can figure out when it is a good time to talk to someone or to take action. Again, same thing. I can find someone to help me when I need help. This is not about you got to do this on your own. This is where you're smart enough and you're willing enough and you're courageous enough to ask for help when you need help. That's what resiliency looks like. You ask for help when you need help. You don't keep drowning and burn out. And then at the end of it, and maybe you guys all need to do this also. This is not just about your kids. Are you able to do this? And if not, then these are the skills you need to develop in order to be more resilient. And I really love this quote. And this guy, this author who writes about resiliency, his actual name is Paul Tough, like go figure. Anyways, it's the central paradox of contemporary parenting. In fact, we have an acute, almost biological impulse to provide for our children, to give them everything they want and need, to protect them from the dangers and discomforts, both large and small. And yet we all know on some level that our kids need more than anything is a little bit of hardship, some challenge, some deprivation that they can then overcome, even if it's just to prove to themselves that they can. And that's it. And that's what we need to expose to them. So what do we need to do as parents? This is what we do. We need to have a I have, I can, I am model. And that's what we need to sort of ingrain in our parenting model. And this is where, fine, they'll learn their math and they'll learn their science and their history and all these other fun things at school, but we need to give them a model of how to deal with failure, how to deal with mistakes, how do you solve a problem, how do you interact with others, which is kind and gentle and firm, where you can stand for yourself. How do you tolerate boredom? I'm telling you, this is the next super skill, which is people do not know how to be bored, but out of boredom comes magic. And most people are usually filling that time with some productive, entertainment or something. So how do you deal with boredom? How do you deal with anger? How do you deal with disappointment? How do you deal with grief? How do you deal with heartbreak? In the I am, I have, I can model. These are the things we need to teach them. And we need to teach them they have to be taught how to encounter distress. Distress is not just something that they're going to learn how to do. A little bit of distress. You know, I always tell people that I have issues with patience. My mom, I'm a very impatient person, and you know, but patience was built in to the old world, right? When I wanted when I wanted to read a book, I used to go to my mom and say, Mom, can you please take me to the library? And my mom would say, sure, I'll take you to the library on Wednesday. So I go to her on Monday. So on Wednesday, she's going to take me to the library, but on Wednesday, it's raining. So she's like, I'm not going to go out in the rain. I'll take you on Friday. So now I'm going to wait till Friday. So on Sunday, I want to read this book. It's now Friday. This patience muscle is being built. Now, Friday comes around. I go to the library. I go to the card catalog. Yes, I'm that old. I go to the card catalog and the drawer is missing. I find the drawer, the card is missing. Finally, I find the card. I go to the bookshelf. There's no book. Then I write my name on that, you know, for the librarian. Please call me when the book is returned. And then maybe 3 weeks later, I get that book. What do kids have now? Mom, I want that book. They go to their Kindle, download, and done. So there's no patience being built because the world is an impatient, fast-paced world. So we've got to find ways where we actually build in some of this distress. So I actually used to like torture my children. I would ask them I wasn't torturous. I really did have a good intention. I would ask them what they wanted for their birthday when they were really young and a month before. What do you want for your birthday? And they would say, I want this doll. Then I would buy the doll and I would put it on top of the shelf and they would see that doll every day. Mama, can I please open the doll? No, you have to wait till your birthday. You have to wait till your birthday and you have to wait. And they're like, oh my God. So soon their muscle is building of patience. And literally this was me saying, how am I going to build the patience muscle? How am I going to build the boredom muscle? Mama, I'm bored. Great. Good. You know, so I'm not going to just give them some entertainment, or I'm not going to make it my job to entertain them. So these are ways you have to actually teach them how to experience these difficult feelings by being very deliberate about it. I've already said all this, so I'm gonna just give you a few exercises as to what you can do for some of these things. Oh, I think I might make it on time. Yeah, I have about 5 minutes to go through this. So for I think the most important thing that you can do is to develop emotional regulation strategies. Now, these are all the different things where you can actually do. So these are things that they're going to need. So show them empathy. Show them what that feels like when you are sitting with them. So when they say, Mom, I had a really bad day at work, don't move into problem solving. Not yet. Sit with them and say, yeah, man, tell me about it. And then you're sitting with them and they're telling you all about it. And you say, man, that sounds so hard. Not like, psh, come on, man, that's no big deal. No, we don't want to do that. We want to give them a model of empathy so they experience what a compassionate witness looks like and say, that is so hard. It's exhausting what you guys are having to go through these days. And that sounds really hard. And now we're listening. Most often, I can say almost 98% of the parents, if not more, if not even 100, are doing this part wrong. They do not know how to just sit and listen and be empathetic. Child comes to them and says, Mom, I had a really bad day at school. Come on, let me go get you an ice cream. Move out of that space. You see how you quickly move that child out of that emotion. And that's where they don't learn how to regulate. And then they wonder why that child has eating issues and then develops weight issues, because we use food to soothe, numb the emotion. Stay with the emotion. Once you've stayed with it enough, the child will soon move out of that emotion and say, you know what? Okay. And then you say, okay, what are you going to do about it? Then you move into problem solving, but staying with it is going to be important. Teach them how to soothe via the 5 senses. You know, what blanket feels good? What smell sounds good? Do you need to turn off the lights and just lay in your bed and stare at the ceiling? Teach them using the 5 senses. Mindfulness is going to be important, doing things mindfully. They're not on their phone while they're watching a movie, while they eat their food. No, mindful living, mindful meditation, all of that needs to be important, where you're literally letting your mind be full of that one experience that you're having. And if you are not doing it, please don't expect your kids to do it, because I'm telling you, most people are not doing it. Most people are doing 3-4 things at the same time, wondering why they're burning out. Cultivate positive emotions. And this is where the resiliency exercise is, where you share and dwell on positive experiences. So one thing to know about positive experiences, just from our nature and from like the times of the Neanderthal days, our memory for negative experiences is 5 times more than the memory for positive experiences. If I ask you what you did yesterday, you're going to probably remember, oh, that guy cut me off in traffic, and then I got in a fight with my colleague, and then you're going to remember all the good things right off the top of your head, because we needed to know that in order to survive in the savannah, in the jungle, and in the desert. We needed to know what went wrong in order to make sure that that didn't happen the next day. Nowadays, we can have a lot of positive experiences. I love the smell of this candle. I have a beautiful cup of tea, but you have to stay with it for 5 breaths, 20 seconds really, where you breathe in for 5 and you really memorize those moments. So dwell on those moments actually. And then you say, at the end of the day, we actually say what went right today. And everybody shares across the room, oh, I did this, and what was funny today, and what made you laugh today, and what made you feel good today. And that's kind of where you want to stay with that. And then also doing mindful moments where you as a family say, all right, guys, we're going to eat this chicken, but we're really going to taste it, and like close your eyes and eat it together. And then you eat pomegranate in the same way, and you feel the bursts of that pomegranate in your mouth, and you drink something at the same time, but you create these mindful, engaged moments. So you teach them a model of being, but doing it together actually is quite fun. In the I have part of the resiliency, here are some resiliency exercises. So it's really powerful to see their parents bounce back from something. So it's very important for you to share your own struggles. I realized that my kids actually didn't know so much of the stuff that I went through, so much of the heartache and so much of the heartbreak that happens while you try to build your own business, and the people that come after you, and the people that are negative, and the people sharing that. Share your failures also, that I tried that and that didn't work, and I tried that and that didn't work. This is how it made me feel, and this is how I coped with it. Name and take risks while you learn something new. So I'm now starting horse riding, and I'm telling them, oh my God, it's really, rocking my world to get on a horse and do something new at this age. And so find ways where you are constantly saying, well, I now know how to do this. I'm going to try this now. I now know how to do this. I'm going to try this now. And this is really great to do with your children. And think about failures and describe one way it changed you for the better. This is really important. Think about successes and think about what you did to make it a reality. Tell the whole story. If you have friends, have them tell their story. There's lots of failures and successes happening all day long, every day for us. And then I would say add the power of yet. And so I'm learning how to canter on a horse right now. And my daughter, who has been riding for 2 years, she's already better at cantering than I am. And I just say, well, I'm not good at it yet. I'm not good at it yet. And I show her my video. She laughs at me. And I said, not yet. I'm going to keep practicing. Not yet. I'm going to go on Thursday. I'm going to practice. Not yet. The power of yet, right? I'm not good at math yet. I'm not good at cooking yet. Just throw in yet, and boom, opens the door for possibilities. So whenever your children say, I'm not good at this, throw in yet. Because if you want to be good at it, you've got to practice, you've got to fail, you've got to take risks. And this is basically what resiliency is. And then I have meaning and purpose. I think it's really important. When we get too focused on achievement, we can forget to connect it to a meaning. And this is one of my favorite quotes by Nietzsche: he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. What is your personal why? Why are you here on this earth? If you guys want to know a life-changing, literally will make you do a mind flip, is actually a book called The Soul's Code. It literally like at this age, I didn't think anything could shock me the way that book shocked my system. Everything you know to be true is questioned in that book to be the reality of things as to why we are alive and what our gift is. And if you know what your gift is, then you know what you need to do. And it allows you to trust that, but it allows as a parent for you to see that gift in your children, because each child brings with it its own gift. And so what is that going to be for that child? What contribution can you make that only you can make? Don't think about money. Don't think about any of these things. What can you do that only you can do, that you can do for the world? And if your child likes baking, okay, bake for the laborers, and, you know, find a way to do something that will be good for the world. If your child likes to draw, what are you going to draw that's going to make the world a better place? And what can you do to link it to a purpose and a meaning? And then lastly, recognize that struggle is to be expected. I think it's really important to give your children hard things to do. You've got to do the one hard thing. As a family, it needs to be an exercise that you guys do, that they struggle. It's not easy for them. They struggle with it. They're hard on themselves. And then you teach them compassion, have them do grit interviews, have them do where they're practicing, they're falling, they're failing. This is going to be important as a family to build resiliency. But this is where I'm blending this in with grit. This is actually a grit exercise where they're saying, I want to become, really good at football. They have a long-term goal. How are you going to show up for that every single day? Where you want to be a really good artist, how are you going to show up for that every single day? What are you going to do for it every single day? I want to do really well in horse riding, and it doesn't have to be on the horse only. There's lots of things I have to do every single day in order to, when I get on that horse, I am flexible, my back is soft, etc., etc. And then I want to just end, actually, I've already said enough of this. I just want to end on this particular point, which is for the working parents. I think there's a lot of guilt associated with working, and you just cannot have an ego about this, guys. Do not try to do this alone. Find the people that are on your board of advisors and get support from all of those people. I actually have a best friend that I say, listen, I need you to take Leanna out. She's having a bad day, and I think she needs a little bit of that rather than a mom. And so I will actually say that, and I will call upon people in my life and say, this is what I need from you. This is where I need you to check in with her. This is what I need you to just, keep an eye on. Know that the work-life balance is a myth. And there's a lot of times people say that, oh, my life is unbalanced. For me, I only hear that my priorities are out of whack. When I hear my work-life balance is no longer there, I'm hearing that I'm not tending to the things that are most important to me. Take care of your health, take care of your family, take care of the people that are the closest to you. Everything else can wait. That's all. Those are the three things that are going to matter most in the long run. And everything else, this balance bit is going to happen, but you've got to take care of your physical health. You've got to take care of your loved ones. Those are the glass balls. You don't drop those balls. When you're juggling everything in life, there are the ones that you don't drop. Everything else can be dropped because those are rubber balls. The glass balls are the ones you make sure you hold up no matter what. And those are the things that get compromised first. You have to be resilient. You have to take care of yourself. Children will do as you do. Working parent guilt consumes your energy. Drop the guilt. Know that there are, I remember reading the research on working parents, which was very, very soothing to me. Children of working mothers, especially, tend to, also go forth and work. They tend to have higher salaries, higher positions. They negotiate better. So remember, there's a whole lot of goodness that comes out of being a working parent. Your children actually can be a lot more independent because you just don't have the time to be micromanaging kids, because you just have a whole lot more on your plate. However, we can afford, especially in Dubai, to be snowplow parents. So nanny do this, driver do that, coach do this, do that. We don't want to do that. We don't want to be a snowplow parent, which removes all the obstacles out of our child's way where they don't do anything for themselves. Think about excellence versus perfection, right? We want to aim towards excellence as a model. I will be excellent in my habits. I will be excellent in the way I operate, but I will not be perfect. I will always, always aim for goodness and values. I will not be perfect. I will make mistakes as a parent. I will do lots of things that are wrong, and I will ask for forgiveness, and I will make sure that I skill up so I don't keep making that same mistake again and again. And then obviously knowing that if you are this kind of pursuit towards your goals and your children being perfect and you being perfect, you're going to end up having a whole lot of anxiety and a whole lot of joyless, anxious achievement. So balance yourself in your values. My model for parenting, if I were to write a book, it would have been value-centered parenting. How do you create a compass for your children that they can just constantly operate out of, and that you can have a model for operating? And how do you live those values every single day rather than have them plastered on a wall and saying, these are our values, but you don't live them? The best, you know, and this is what I do for the Lighthouse. I don't have our values anywhere on our walls. I want my clients, I want my team, I want the people that work there all to know and live those values as they walk through that door. If kindness is a value, if compassion is a value, if service is a value, this is how we live our life. And this is what I want my kids to see, right? This is when generosity is a value. Where am I being generous? Am I being generous with my time? Am I being generous with my money? Am I being generous to the people that are working for me? Where do I show that generosity? And so these are, oh my gosh, I'm not going to read this quote, but I really think it's a beautiful quote. But I'm going to answer your questions and maybe we can come back to the quote. These are for some of the people that have to leave right off. So I'm going to answer I'm going to answer all of your questions. Hold on. I'm going to put this slide back up because some of that, I'm going to do the teenage talk on here. Oh, sorry guys. Can you still see me? Yeah, there we go. I'm sorry, I don't know what just happened. Okay, so at Lighthearted Parenting is where I will be doing my teenage talk on Monday at 12. Smart Heart Board Game is where I'm going to be doing a Instagram Live on emotional intelligence, this game that we have created. And then these are the Instagram accounts that I contribute to regularly: at Dr. Saleha, at Lighthouse Arabia, at Lighthouse Insight, at Lighthearted Parenting. So I would go ahead and follow those. And I'm now going to go right actually to the bottom of the questions. So let's see. So there's a book, yeah, so it's called The Narcissism Epidemic, and it's by Tweng. I don't know how to say her name actually. The author is that. So did you guys just get that? Yeah. And it's, if you go on Lighthearted Parenting and Smart Heart Board Game, I have a lot of the parenting books in our highlight section. So these are books that I've read. I mean, I've read hundreds of books at this point, and I'm telling you, these are the ones that I'm like, these are the go-to ones, because there's just so much out there now that makes me just feel so anxious. But these are the books that I really like. Okay, so there's a lot of thank yous on here. So someone said it would be good to have another session to go over the full 90-minute. I totally agree. I love my parenting talks. I can talk and talk and talk about parenting because I just love it. And so usually these are 90-minute talks, and I go further in depth on some of the slides. So let's see, some people, so someone asked me, so now I'm reading the questions, guys, I'm not zoning out just yet. On the weapon of mass destruction, someone said, age segment, how much time should kids have access to? So I said weapon of mass distraction, but it also is a weapon of mass destruction if we don't use it right. I would say that for me, entertainment technology is different from technology. We've got to see these two things as very, very separately, because let's just be frank here. We are not worried about our child doing multiplications for 9 hours a day, right? We're worried about them being on games. We're worried about them being on Instagram and Facebook. Well, they're not on Facebook. Oh my gosh, that is so like, that is not them. Snapchat and all these other things that they're doing. This is what we're worried about: WhatsApp, chatting, etc. So what we want to do is we want to create a contract where if you don't do all of these things, you don't get this one thing. Now, my kids don't have a phone. We have one phone that sits outside of my room. If they want to WhatsApp with their friends, they can do it on there. Or if they want to message me, they can do it on there. If my daughter goes out, I might send it with her. But usually I even try to send her without the phone just to build some muscle there on what she would do if she were to run into a problem and there was no phone. So there are times where I consciously do that, where she might have to use her phone, her friend's phone, but that means she has to take my phone number, et cetera, et cetera. So I would actually create some struggle there for them, but I would actually say to them that you have to have, 30 minutes of exercise, you have to finish your homework, you have to do all of these things before you actually have access to your game. And so if you don't do that, I take this away. Sign the contract, and then you get this device. This is what I would do. Please don't think that, because you're their friend on Snapchat and you're their friend on whichever, they have other accounts that you have no access to. And that's a fact. If you guys don't know that, go watch some of the documentaries on that, and you will know more about what's actually happening on there. And so that's what I would recommend, is that it is not about how much time they're on it. It's about what they are not doing as a result of being on it. So create a protocol where they have to do all those things before they go on it. I personally would not put any entertainment technology on their computer that they use for work. I would keep those two separate. And I know that maybe costs more, but this is just what I would do. My kids they have an iPad, and then they have a school computer. All their gaming and whatever else they do is on their iPad, and that iPad stays in my room, and they get it once a week for, an hour. But there's so many things that they're doing during the week that they actually don't even have time to do that. And so for me, it's just really important that I make sure that they do all the other things before they get on. Are they reading 25 minutes a day? Are they, paying attention when we have movie night for family? Or are they distracted during that time? All this stuff is going to be where this is what is going to get that thing taken away from you. And this is just normal consequences. And I'm not saying that this is how I will always be, guys. I am against social media for teenagers because it is a highly sensitive time for children. And I just don't think people are kind. And I just don't think the content is valuable necessarily on there. The costs are too high and the benefits are too low for teenagers. Now, once my daughter develops a strong sense of self, when she knows who she is, maybe 16, 17, 18, I'm not going to know what she does when she goes off to college, but I know what I want for her right now. And my kids don't have it, and I'm not going to let them have it, but I will make sure that during this time, I'm building in all sorts of things for them to actually engage in. They all have a therapist where they do insight-oriented work. They don't have any clinical issues, not yet at least. Maybe they just sit there and talk about me the whole time. And I'm allow them to do that with the therapist at the Lighthouse. I said, please don't put it in the notes. Don't show me anything. I give them that privacy. And so this is where I think my investment is in protecting them. And sometimes people are like, oh, aren't they missing out? Yeah, but I don't think they're missing out on anything too important. And they have a way actually, they actually have a way of engaging with their friends through WhatsApp or through iMessage, which I can monitor, and they have their way of getting around, and they all seem to be very socially apt and capable and athletic and engaged. And so I haven't seen the cost of it. Would they get teased by their friends, or would their friends say, oh my God, your mom is just so whatever? Okay. And they're just going to have to deal with that. I grew up in the United States as a Muslim. And for me, I heard all sorts of things. And my mom had all sorts of rules that we just weren't allowed to engage in. And so I'm actually very okay with that when you have to stand for yourself and for your values, there will be people that will come up against you. And they will say, oh my God, you're so whatever. You're actually going to have to say, yeah, I am so whatever. And I am, Muslim, or I am Black, or I am, you know, of this, I hold this value, and no, I don't date, and no, I don't do the, okay, these are values that you have to stand for. Eventually, you want your children to be adults that can stand for themselves. And if my child ever comes to me, and they know this, if you ever come to me and say everyone else is doing it, you can be sure that that's just going to tack on one more year of you not ever going to get to do it. Because if everyone is doing it, does not mean that you do it. Check with your compass, check with your values, check with the research, check with the science, and then come and tell me, what is everyone doing? What is the right thing to do versus what is everyone doing? Because most often what everyone is doing, especially these days, is maybe not the right thing. Okay, so what is the right thing to do? What is everyone doing? So someone asked me about the book, The Soul's Code, not the source code. I'm going to write it for you guys. It's by Hillman. That's all I have to say about that book. It literally was the most inspiring, soul-shocking book that I have read. So someone says, what's the name of the book about purpose that shocked you? Yes, I just gave you that. So what if we didn't get parented the right way? Is it too late to self-parent? Of course not. Oh, she wants a course on this. Okay, yes, of course, I will do that. But you can be your own parent and you can discipline yourself. And remember, guys, discipline is not the same thing as punishment. We linked it to that using, I don't know, some religious values and some patriarchal stuff, but discipline comes from the root word disciple, which means to teach. Teach your children. If they make a mistake, drama, no. Okay, you made a mistake. How did you make this mistake? What did you do before it? What did you learn from it? How are you going to make sure you don't make it again? That's it. These are the training wheels for adulthood. If we start yelling and screaming at them, you can be sure that they're not going to be coming to you about what they need to do when they're in trouble. So we need to find a way to just make all of these moments teaching moments. Okay, you got a really bad grade on this test. Tell me what happened. Instead of the drama that comes with that and the fear that comes with that. We do not want to raise our children with fear. We want to have respect. Oh, you can be sure that my kids will not speak to me a certain way, but they're not scared of me. I'll know think, oh, mama, I got a really bad grade on this test and this is what I did and this is what I should not do and this is what I'm gonna do. And they'll just come to me now with this stuff. They know that I can be influenced. Mama, can I please eat sugar when I'm on my cycle? You know, because I really feel like it during the week. Okay, yeah, okay, I'm gonna be, you can influence me. You can, convince me. I'm not this hardlining person. But when it comes to the no's, you can be sure that I have given them enough research. I will send them articles on the dangers of social media, on the destruction that it's causing, and the havoc it's causing in people's minds, on how we're literally rewiring our brain, how we are literally distracted and YouTubing and, Snapchatting and all of these other things on these high dopamine addictive applications, where people in Silicon Valley, the ones that create these apps, will never allow their children to use those apps, where the highest numbers of schools that have very little technology happen to be in Silicon Valley. Why is that? Because they know the dangers of what they've created, but they won't give it to their own children. So I'm going to go off of that, and I'm going to tell them that. And I will promise you that if it's good for you, I will go to the end of the earth to give it to you. But if it's bad for you, you can move the earth and I still wouldn't. And so I think it's very, very important to tell and if you have given it to them and you are like, oh, now what have I done? Maybe having a conversation about, hey, man, I didn't know this. And now I know this. Can we do a little bit of research together? And now, and I would not just go and unplug everything from their room. I would say, you're no longer allowed to have that in your room when you go to sleep. You cannot, you cannot have it in your room. That's probably the first thing I would do. Is the number one thing that it's affecting is their sleep. They're waking up and the ding and the ring and all of this stuff is happening until, so no devices after a certain time. I will put blue screens on their devices, on all of their devices. These are just some things that you can start to do. I would even, my kids know that I'm watching every move they make online, so they better not make the wrong move because I'm going to know about it. And so I'm not spying on them, but I'm watching them. And this is where you would not necessarily let your kids, you know, wander off into a foreign world without you sort of keeping an eye on them, right? But until they were old enough to wander off into that foreign world. There's another app, and somebody asked me that question, so I can, okay, I'm going to put it on here. I'm going to answer. Go on this, Bar Technology. They have a great, did you guys get that answer? Can you raise your hand if you did? Yes, okay, good. Yeah, and guys, remember, you're the parent. That's all I have to say. Like, you are the parent. I know so many of us are actually really scared to like disappoint our children. And you know what? Sometimes I'm like, if I haven't disappointed my kid in some way, I'm probably doing something wrong because I'm appeasing them and they don't have a frontal lobe, remember? So if I'm just appeasing them the whole time and they're driving, then we're all probably going to get into a car wreck at some point because they don't know this stuff. I know this stuff. And so it's really important for you to be the one in the driver's seat. It's really important that you feel very anchored in your decisions. And Roy Disney had a quote, and this is a quote, you know, again, one of those things that I'm like, yeah, this is how I'm going to parent my kids, where I trust myself now. Now I don't have to read thousands of parenting books. I trust my values and I check in with that. And his quote was, if you know what your values are, you will never lose your way. So what are your values? And check in with that value. And if your kid comes and says, Mama, everyone's doing it, what is that value that I'm teaching my kid? Do what everyone is doing. Go ahead and do what everyone is doing. That kid's going to grow up, spend money he doesn't have, do things he shouldn't do, say things he probably shouldn't say because everyone is doing it. So what value am I teaching my child when I give him what he wants in this way, at this time, in, you know, with this device, et cetera, et cetera. And then bring that up. Just say, I don't think you're ready for that yet. I need to see that you show me that you are responsible enough for this. Like, parents would never buy a pet for their kids unless they showed some sense of responsibility, but they give them a phone when they're 8, and then things happen that are really scary, actually. So, sorry guys, I'm just going to check my schedule to see when my next, so I'm going to have to go soon. Let's see, I'm going to keep answering some of these questions. Yeah, someone says, is it tough to sort of go backwards because we were very lenient with the phone when we first gave it to him? Sure, it's always harder to take something away. Now, imagine if someone took your phone away, you wouldn't like it very much. But I would say start off with these small rules where, again, remember, you're the parent, you pay the bills, unless they're paying for it themselves, then I wouldn't necessarily be too concerned. That this is, I didn't know this stuff. I didn't know how highly addictive it is, but we're not going to have it at the dinner table. You break that rule, that phone is taken away from you for a week. You're not going to have it in your room. You break that rule, it's taken away for a week. Like, have this conversation with your child and say, these are going to be some of the rules and parameters. If your grades decline, if you show me you cannot use it responsibly, if you use it in a way that you don't want sort of known to the world and you're bullying people or you're posting things that you shouldn't, and this is what digital citizenship looks like. This is how you use it in the right way. This is where you are polite. I don't want you using it in the car because I want it to be a time where we're actually spending time with each other. Like, this is about also sort of building a relationship with your child where they see this as not as a punishment. So if you don't have that relationship with your child, you're going to have to draw some rules. And I would probably first start off with just not having it in their room at night. That would be the first rule I would go with, because it really is messing up their sleep, and it is really, really messing up everything else that goes along with what you don't do after sleep. And if you haven't seen my sleep webinar, go on my YouTube channel and watch it, and then make your kids watch it, because it's really, really important that we take sleep seriously, especially at that age when their body is going through all sorts of changes. I always tell people, especially for teenagers, I say, remember when you were pregnant? This is for the women. Remember when you were pregnant and how exhausted you were and how moody you were and what you wanted to eat changed from like hour to hour. Remember that? Well, now imagine that for 4 years or 5 years, and that's what the teenage goes through. So you want to make sure that they're heavy on the sleep and heavy on the self-care, good eating habits, good healthy. We just got to carry them through until 16, 17, 18. And that's where, you know, they sort of move into a little bit more independence. So I'm not saying we hover over them. We are protective of them. My kids go on all sorts of school trips, and I love those school trips because they're not allowed to have phones. And all these parents go on like this, like fit. I want to be able to communicate with my child. Let the child go, man. Let him go off for a week without a phone, because this is where parents are like, I need to know if he's okay. If he's not okay, you'll probably find out. This is where you need to do your work. If you are anxious, for sure, you're going to raise children who are not resilient. I can guarantee you that, because you will raise them based off of your anxiety, not off of what is the right thing to do. Okay, let's see. You're welcome. This session will be available on YouTube at some point. I'm actually going to do an Instagram live. Oh, no, I don't. Actually, if you request from your person that organized this session for you, for me to do the iGen talk, so how do you raise children in the I generation? That's the tech talk that I do. And that might be a good one for the kids to watch, because I really do talk about the dangers of social media and the dangers of technology when not used, when not used right. So, all right, let me see. I'm going all the way up through the questions, guys. I have a few more minutes. When do you think is the right age to give a smartphone? I don't think there is a right age. I think you need to know your children. For example, my daughter, I could give that phone to her when she was like 9, and she would use it wisely. But I haven't given anyone a smartphone because I just know that she's responsible. But I'm still not going to give it to her because she doesn't need it. You don't need a smartphone when you're a kid. Give them a dumb phone. They have like the 99 dirham one on, you know, the Nokia ones. Okay, fine, they're going to get bullied. But if you just want them to call you, that's all they really need, right? And now they've come up with these phones that look like this, but they're dumb phones, and they don't have like internet access, and they don't have like YouTube. But that's so the kids don't actually make fun of them. So it just looks like another phone like this, but it actually doesn't have any of these bells and whistles that are actually quite dangerous for kids in the wrong hand. Let's see. So yeah, there is no right age, but there is, I mean, I would say, I don't think I'm going to consider giving them a phone until they're probably, you know, sophomore, junior in high school, maybe even beyond that. I don't think they need a smartphone. Everything can happen through other types of phones. They can iMessage me from their laptop if they're at school. They can, you know, call me if they need me through another phone. So I'm not really sure what the answer would be, but for sure, I would not let them have social media until they've hit maybe 17, 18 years old. So for me, the smartphone really is about accessibility to the things they shouldn't have access to, which is the internet, which is unsupervised, which is YouTube, which is like endless amounts, Netflix, which, you know, this is where kids are going into the washroom and they're looking at porn. They're doing things that they shouldn't be doing because they have that smartphone or because they have that laptop. And so I would just have some rules around not having it in their phone, not having it in their room, not taking it into the bathroom, like these types of things, but then also having the difficult, weird conversations that we have to have with our children about this stuff. So yeah, I already said the suitable age. Let's see. And remember, you're the parent, guys. I see a lot of messages on here about, you know, I already did it. Now we're seeing our child suffer. I'm seeing a lot of that. And I would just say, take it away. And just say, you know what, we tried it this way. Now we're going to try it another way. They're going to probably hate you for a little while. Give them a way to access their friends, you know, just say it's going to be with me. And when you're done with your homework, you can message your friends, but then you have to leave it with me. And it's going to charge here in my room. It's not going to be charging anywhere outside of here. So I think it's really important to just say, this is how we're going to roll for now. And then you can earn it back, but I need to see this, and that from you in order for you to have that access the way you had it. But we tried doing it this way. It didn't work. I'm sorry. Now we're going to do it this way, and you can earn it back this way. So let's see. So guys, I'm just going to read this quote because I really love it. For those of you guys who are still on here, and for, you know, YouTube, I'm just going to put, so I'm going to read this to you guys. In the end, though this research had a surprising effect, it made me more relaxed as a parent. When Ellington was born, I was very much caught up in the idea of childhood as a race. The faster a child develops skills, the better he does on tests, the better he'll do in life. Having done this reporting, I'm less concerned about my son's reading and counting ability. Don't get me wrong, I still want him to do that stuff, but I think he'll get there in time. What I'm more concerned about is his character, or whatever the right synonym is for character when you're talking about a 3-year-old. I want him to be able to get over disappointments, to calm himself down, to keep himself from keep working on a puzzle even when it gets frustrating, to be good at sharing, to feel loved and confident and full of sense of belonging. Most important, I want him to be able to deal with failure. And that's the difficult thing for parents, to give their children, since we have a deep in our DNA, this urge to shield our children from any kind of trouble, every kind of trouble. But what we're finding out now is that in trying to protect our children, we may actually be harming them by not giving them the chance to learn, to manage adversity, to cope with failure. We produce kids who have real problems when they grow up. Overcoming adversity is what produces character, and character, even more than IQ, is what leads to real and lasting success. Yes. And now I know some of you are going to say one thing, and then I'm going to really log off, is that if we want our children to learn from bad experiences, why shouldn't I give them a phone and let them learn? The same way you wouldn't let them drive until they learned how to drive a car. The same way you wouldn't let them, you know, hit the bottle until a certain age. The same way you wouldn't let them smoke cigarettes. The same way you wouldn't let them eat unhealthy foods and not do exercise. This is about brain development, guys. This is not life experiences when I'm talking about technology and social media and entertainment technology specifically. It is absolutely harmful for the self-esteem, self-confidence, and the neural pathways in your brain. When your selfhood is being developed by how many likes you get, how many people follow you, this is where danger happens. And so I don't want to do that to my kids until they've figured out who they really are, at least in some sense. I don't want my daughter to say, well, you know what? When I draw, I get a lot more likes, but when I sing, I don't. So I'm going to draw more. But singing is where her heart might be. So this is what you don't want to do. You've got to think of entertainment technology as an addiction. And you would not expose your child to an addictive substance. So some people smoke and they only smoke once in a while. Some people smoke shisha and they only smoke one. Some people drink wine and they only drink wine. But these things are addictive in their nature. So we don't want to expose them to an addictive thing when their brain is actually being developed at that time, but their sense of selfhood is not developed either. So that's what I mean by entertainment technology being limited. And just really, really quickly, and then I have to go, what the teenage brain is different from the adult brain. When I eat a piece, so for example, our dopamine is my dopamine, the children's dopamine is lower than my dopamine, okay? So her dopamine levels are going to be lower than mine. When I eat a chocolate cake, I get a dopamine hit. When I look at my social media, I get a dopamine hit. When she eats a chocolate cake, she gets a dopamine hit. And it's literally that much higher than mine. So they start off lower, so they seek out dopamine, and that's why they engage in risky behavior. And when they get the hit, it's a whole lot higher. So it's far more addictive for her to engage in this than it would be for me. If I start social media the same time my daughter starts social media, she's going to be more likely to get addicted than I am, because the hit is just not that much higher for me. So what I'm trying to do is I'm prolonging the time where she's not exposed to this addictive substance until further on in her development, because that's where, I want her to be if she does ever want to get on social media. I want her to be further down that path so she's less likely to get addictive. I grew up with very little television growing up. We just didn't have TV in our home. We watched like one show, like primetime live, like news shows. And now none of my family members have TV in their homes. Like we just don't, we have, TV, but I watch Apple and I have a movie I might watch, this movie, but there's no television per se. So I would say that children end up just going back to their old ways of doing things as to what was done. My kids don't have a lot of TV exposure. We watch movies, we have movie night. So what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to build a default for them. And that default is going to be, they don't actually necessarily seek social media out. They don't necessarily seek out TV, entertainment, this type of stuff, but they do have exercise in their daily schedules. They do have good sleeping habits. They do have good eating habits. These are the defaults I'm sitting. Then of course they're going to lose their way. And I hope they do. You usually come back a whole lot stronger onto your path when you lose yourself a little bit. So maybe they lose their way when they get to college, but I know that their default setting is going to be this. They are going to find their way. Just like when I was younger, my mom used to tell me, pray, 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 pray. Oh my God, pray, pray, pray. Every day it was pray. And I was like, I will never pray again. Once I go to college, I will never, ever pray again. I prayed enough for 5 lifetimes. Then I went off to college and I didn't pray. I was like, oh, freedom, I'm not praying. 2 months later, I was just agitated, anxious. And then I was like, oh my God, I want to pray. And then I started praying and then I never stopped. And so you do lose your way, but the default system is set. This is where people who actually experience abuse in their childhood will find an abusive partner because that was their default, unless they redo some things and they do some healing. So you want to set some good defaults in place for them and then let them lose their way and be trusting of the fact that they will find their way home. Like I said, 90 minutes, but I could have gone on and on. But guys, if you follow these different Instagram accounts and also my YouTube channel, I do put a lot of this stuff on there all the time. And I will try to put more parenting stuff on there because I haven't done that recently. So this was the first time I'm doing a parenting talk in many, many, many months. And I come to life with this topic. So yeah, that's it. And remember, guys, you're all doing the best you can until, you know better, and then you do better. And that's what we're all doing. And we all make mistakes. Be kind, be compassionate with yourself. We're literally all trying to do the best we can. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to direct message me on my Instagram account, and I would be very happy to answer them. I'll see you guys. Bye.